family of 3 spent all their savings to buy a large flat, but as soon as they moved in, they discovered that the building was tilted. The son casually placed a marble on the floor, and it rapidly rolled toward the balcony. Lao Bai heard Shang instantly, but to verify his suspicion, he tried it again. However, this time the marble stayed still right where it was. Seeing this, his wife smiled and comforted him, saying, "How could such an expensive house be tilted?" His wife's words temporarily eased Lao Bai's concerns. But late at night, something terrifying happened. A heavy rainstorm caused the entire building to silently sink 5 centimeters, without any of the sleeping residents noticing. The next morning, as soon as Lao Bai stepped out, he saw a bizarre scene. The road that was flat yesterday now had a crack. So he quickly contacted the municipal department, but they required all the building's owners to agree unanimously before an inspection could be done. Helpless, Lao Bai had to call a meeting with the neighbors. Strangely, when everyone heard that the building was tilted, they became even more reluctant to spread the news, because they feared that if the news got out, property prices would surely plummet. Thus, the meeting ended in discord. The next day, colleagues came to congratulate Lao Bai on his new home. However, while Xiao Jin was washing his hands, the tap water suddenly flowed intermittently, but he didn't think much of it. After dinner, both Xiao Jin and Xiao Zhu got drunk and ended up staying overnight at Lao Bai's place. But no one expected that this decision would soon put them in danger. The next day, the entire building suddenly had a water outage. The neighbor, Away, asked an uncle in the next building if they had a water outage too. However, the uncle just joked with him, but the next second, the building where Away was suddenly shook violently, and the road surface rapidly cracked in all directions. At that moment, Lao Bai, who had just sobered up, looked out the window, and the entire building began to rapidly sink, falling into a large deep pit. The sunken building eventually got stuck between rock walls. Away had just felt lucky to be alive, but the building tilted again, and the car that had just fallen on the roof was quickly sliding toward his direction. Fortunately, he desperately used his feet to brace himself and avoided being crushed. As the building continued to sink, the car eventually fell into Lao Bai's home downstairs. Recognizing that it was Xiao Jin trapped inside the car, Lao Bai desperately pulled on the car door to rescue him. Unexpectedly, the cheap door handle was torn off by Lao Bai in one pull. Luckily, Xiao Jin, in his panic, managed to roll down the window. But just as Lao Bai was about to pull him out, he heard a woman's cry for help from the rubble. Thinking it was his wife, Lao Bai immediately left Xiao Jin and rushed over. After the two of them struggled to move a wardrobe aside, they discovered it was their colleague, Xiao Zhu. After everyone gathered, they searched the entire building but found no other people. Only then did Lao Bai breathe a slight sigh of relief, guessing that his wife might have taken their son out in the morning. By this time, rescue teams on the surface had quickly arrived. They tried to slide down with ropes, but unexpectedly, even a slight movement caused dangerous falling rocks. In the end, they had to abandon this plan. At this point, the people in the deep pit shouted desperately upward, but no matter how hard they shouted, their voices couldn't reach the surface hundreds of meters away. To make matters worse, there was no cell phone signal at all here. Just as the few of them felt despair, a cry for help suddenly came from a room. When they opened the door, they found it was Away's son, Xiao Shuai. However, in the face of the disaster, Xiao Shuai, who was usually quiet, was unusually calm. He quickly suggested collecting drinking water, food, medicine, and warm supplies. Then, conserve energy and wait for rescue from the surface. Only in this way could they maximize their chances of survival. Everyone was amazed by these words, and Xiao Shuai calmly explained that he had learned all this from TikTok. As a father, Away was seeing this excellent side of his son for the first time. Everyone began to gather usable supplies according to Xiao Shuai's instructions. Meanwhile, on the surface, a drone was deployed, and they prepared to control it to descend into the deep pit to check if anyone was still alive. However, as soon as the drone descended less than 100 meters, the signal was lost. Then the drone fell uncontrollably and eventually crashed into a dirt pile near Xiao Shuai. Hearing that a drone had come down, everyone excitedly rushed out. They knew that people on the surface were trying to save them, so they excitedly shouted for help at the drone's camera. Unexpectedly, the building sank again. Although it eventually stopped, it was only precariously lodged by one corner. As a result, Xiao Jin rapidly slid down, and Xiao Zhu hurriedly reached out to grab him but couldn't reach. Then Xiao Zhu saw a bundle of electric wires in the distance, so she immediately crawled over, grabbed the wires, and quickly threw them to Xiao Jin. However, just as they were about to pull Xiao Jin up, the aged wires suddenly snapped, and the few of them slid toward the abyss again. At the critical moment, they grabbed each other's ankles and managed not to fall. But Away, who was pulling hard, fell into a mud pit behind. Seeing his father sinking deeper, Xiao Shuai, who usually disliked him the most, jumped down without hesitation, and as a result, he also got trapped in the mud pit. Away didn't want his son to die with him, so he desperately lifted his son. However, this action made him sink even faster, and he eventually submerged into the mud. At this moment, Lao Bai, thinking of something, quickly rushed to the next floor, then swung a chair and desperately smashed it against the window. The moment the glass shattered, mud surged in. Everyone desperately dug through the mud and managed to rescue Away and his son from it. Meanwhile, the drone regained some signal and slowly began to ascend back to the surface. The rescue team replayed the footage, and only then did they confirm that the people below were still alive. But by now, a day had passed since the building sank. After studying the situation, experts believed that the building might collapse again, and there would be a heavy rainstorm late at night, making the situation very critical. Even more tricky, the controlled demolition plan proposed by the experts was strongly opposed by the surrounding residents. The rescue team had to first airdrop supplies into the deep pit using parachutes. After Away and his son found the supplies, they hurriedly told everyone the news. After getting the satellite phone inside, everyone scrambled to call their loved ones. But when it was Lao Bai's turn, he heard that his wife had not taken their son with her in the morning. This meant that his son might also be in the building. Lao Bai immediately put on his gear and climbed down along the elevator shaft. Away found a massive barrel and urged everyone to climb inside. But when the time came, he chose to stay behind. Someone had to tighten the lid from the outside, and he, for the sake of his son, was willing to sacrifice himself. In the previous episode, Lao Bai learned that his wife had not taken their son. He immediately grabbed his gear and went to search for the boy. Following Away's directions, he pried open the cover plate at the bottom of the elevator shaft and jumped down without hesitation. But right then, the forecasted heavy rain began pouring down on the surface. Washed by the rainwater, another building indeed collapsed as the experts had predicted, crashing into the deep pit and finally getting stuck midway. By this time, Lao Bai had already climbed down to the lowest level, but his leg was injured by falling debris. Fortunately, he faintly heard his sons crying. Ignoring his leg injury, Lao Bai hurried toward the sound and finally found the shivering child inside a drainage pipe. But by now, rainwater had already flooded into the bottom of the pit, gradually submerging the ground. Lao Bai could only carry his son on his back and climb up again along the drainage pipe. After finally reaching the second floor, he found only a thin water pipe leading upward. However, as soon as he stepped onto the pipe, its rusted connection suddenly gave way. Hearing the cries for help, several people on the rooftop rushed over and pulled the father and son from a crack in the outer wall. Before everyone could catch their breath, water pouring in from all sides caused the water level to rise rapidly, threatening to submerge the rooftop. Suddenly, an empty plastic barrel floated past Xiao Zhu's eyes. She instantly had an idea and shouted for everyone to gather anything buoyant. However, just as everyone was frantically collecting plastic bottles, a giant water storage barrel suddenly drifted into view. This huge barrel became everyone's lifeline. Away urged everyone to get into the barrel quickly, while he himself stayed outside, because someone had to be outside the barrel to tighten the lid. Then, ignoring everyone's objections, he quickly fastened the barrel lid shut. The very next moment, more groundwater surged forth violently. The barrel then began to float upward, but at that moment, the building lodged above suddenly fell, instantly pushing the barrel dozens of meters underwater. However, as the barrel regained buoyancy and rose again, it got stuck beneath some electrical wires. But through the combined efforts of everyone inside pushing and hitting, the barrel finally broke free. Yet, greater danger awaited them. A sharp iron rod suddenly pierced the barrel wall, and rainwater immediately began spraying in through the gap. They pushed against the rod with all their might, but it was no use. But right then, knocking sounds came from outside the barrel. Away, who knew how to swim, had not only escaped danger but had come back to help them. With the coordinated efforts from inside and out, the barrel finally broke free again. But a large amount of rainwater rushed in through the breach. Seeing the barrel about to fill completely, Xiao Jin roared and used his body to block the hole. Just like that, the opening was sealed, and the barrel continued to rise. But Away missed his final chance to grab onto the barrel. By now, he no longer had the strength to keep up. However, just as he was about to suffocate, the electrical wires tangled around the barrel suddenly caught his ankle. He was dragged along as it rushed to the surface. After multiple impacts, the barrel was leaking from many places when it surfaced. Those inside could not open the lid. The barrel was about to be completely filled with water. Lao Bai desperately held his son above his head. But at this critical moment between life and death, Away struggled and climbed up. Using his last bit of strength, he pried open the barrel lid, and everyone finally saw daylight again. At that moment, the rescue team spotted them floating up and immediately used a crane to begin the rescue. As the barrel was slowly lifted, the adventure in the underground abyss finally came to an end. Loved ones, having survived the ordeal, embraced and cried. Months passed, and the surviving friends gathered again at Lao Bai's new home. Although the spacious apartment had become a compact RV, the laughter filling the room felt warmer than ever before.